Welcome to our more in-depth view of Nikajo. In this video, we'll be looking at Nikajo in some more depth. We'll be looking at the angles a little bit deeper, looking at how to make the lock more effective. We'll also be looking at how we get our opponents onto the locks, mainly working in standing position for the time being. We'll also be looking at how to make the lock more effective by the use of pressure points. We'll describe these in terms of both nerve points and also TCM points. So let's get into Nikajo. One of the major reasons why joint locks may not work in a practical situation is if the person executing the lock doesn't really understand how to manipulate the other person's body. It's very easy to become so concerned with how your body moves that you're not thinking about how these movements are affecting the other person's body. For example, I can try to create the idea of Nikajo, but it won't have any effect whatsoever. Minor little adjustments means that it works very quickly. So in this context, I'm thinking about how my movement puppeteers Andrew's body to move. This can be clearly illustrated by being able to execute the joint lock with minimal pressure just by using the fingertips. On our introduction to joint lock videos, we looked at the angles that we need to take the opponent's arm into. So let's recap those. We're looking at creating 90-degree angles through the opponent's arm. So more or less a letter Z. And we're looking at tipping the wrist towards the opponent's nose. The pressure that we apply is with our palm against the back of his palm, pushing the palm towards the elbow. We need to compress this. If we don't use the other hand to apply pressure in the other direction, his arm just moves. So we're really looking to compress with the two hands. We also need to ensure that the opponent's elbow doesn't raise up, allowing him to escape the lock. So the left hand initially has two purposes. It prevents the elbow from coming up. It also adds slight sideways pressure to help compress the joint. The second stage was the opening up the joint alongside his little finger edge. So after we've compressed, we're opening. The final stage being the tip towards his nose. That's a simple recap of what we looked at in the previous video. So now let's add some more points. When we compress the joint and when we're looking at the direction, to simplify the direction or to maximize the pain, we're thinking of the pressure after we've done the collapsing, the rotation and the tipping. We're thinking of taking a line directly from the point of the wrist directly to his groin. So if we draw a line from here to his groin and we push in that direction. What this will do is turn the lock into more so a break than a lock. Moving away from centering on the opponent's manipulation, we'll now look at how our posture can affect the effectiveness of the lock. If we have our chest raised up, we can't effectively use the muscles from the arms or the back in the lock. So from this position with my chest raised high, if I try to apply the lock, it doesn't really work. He'll feel some pain, but I won't be able to lock him. So simply hollowing the chest and allowing our back to round means we can use the lats into the lock. We can also add to this a little bow, so we're resting our body weight down into the lock. If we are determined to break the opponent's arm, we can take quite an urgent step forwards, projecting the power out of the feet into the wrist, which we'll do very gently. All of these mount up as power sources towards making the lock more effective. So we have, from our initial position, we have the compression of the joint, we have the opening, we have the tipping. We have moving the direction down towards his groin. We have ensuring that our chest isn't raised. We have the compression of the chest. We have the rounding of the back. We have the slight tipping of the body. And then finally, we add the little step with it. We can add pressure points into our joint locks to make them more effective. But it's important to not rely on the pressure points alone to make the technique work. Different people, depending on their individual pain threshold or their level of intoxication, will react differently to different pressure points. We'll both look at these pressure points in terms of their TCM names and also their medical names. The first points that we'll look at for Nikajo are along the radial nerve, along the ulnar nerve, and also through the median nerve. Along the radial and ulnar nerves, we're going to use pressure from the thumb and from the finger to squeeze the hand together. This is located in amongst the index finger and on the outside of the little finger. So from here, we squeeze the hand. The radial nerve continues up the arm, and from here, we grip in onto the points on the forearm. This also is along the large intestine meridian. So we can get an effect out of our opponent by gripping into these points and gripping around the hand before we actually apply the joint lock itself. When looking at the median nerve, which runs through the center of the forearm, we can use the thumb on the compression hand to press in. So to recap, we have the radial nerve, the ulnar nerve, the median nerve, and the radial nerve. In concluding the video, we're going to look at some applications for the joint lock. Some of these applications have practical uses, some of them are more so training exercises that we used to just get used to the feel of the joint lock. We'll start off with a shirt grab. In these situations, it's better to strike first, then apply a lock or restraint. You all right?
Yeah.
If he does get the grip on, we can then take for granted that we would have thrown the strike and look at how we'll apply the joint lock from there. So from his grab, the first thing we need to do is weaken his grip. At this position, his arm's already strong. He's tensed the muscles in his arm, so we're going to find it very difficult to move his arm. We have two choices. We can bring his arm away from his body or take his arm closer into his body to weaken his grip. So we can either go in or we can come away. Breaking them down, as we step in towards him, we can use the pressure points, gripping into the pressure points, collapsing the body in and pressing his elbow in towards the body as we lock. When drawing away, we mustn't step backwards. If we do, we put the weight into our heels, which gives him the advantage and he can push us backwards before we can apply the lock. So rather than step backwards, what we'll do is rotate on a circle. Adding more detail to this, we collapse his wrist by hollowing the chest and leaning onto his arm. We then rotate the body to pull his arm away from his body, step in and apply the lock. Taking this to grappling range, we can apply Nikajo on either arm. From the grapple, we simply trap and bring the arm over and apply pressure down. We can also apply this on the other side, here. The tighter he grips, the worse he comes off. We can make this more effective by doing a cross-arm grab. On the outside of his arms, we collapse, grip his arm, turn, and lock. Applying the same on the other side, we come over and lock. We may find ourselves in a situation where we get our arms tied up. This could be from a basic fighting guard or where we've been throwing punches and the opponent's just gripped our arms. So from our fighting guard, we've had our arms tied up. Nikajo can then be applied on either arm. From here, we grip, roll the point of the elbow over, step and bow towards the opponent. We can also apply that on the other side. And again, at speed. The more traditional approach to practicing this lock is from a wrist grab. Whilst initially this seems impractical, it's a very useful practice because the opponent can get a stronger grip around your wrist than they can around your bicep, obviously because your wrist is narrower than your bicep. If you can make it work here, you can obviously make it work here. So from here, we bring the point of the elbow into the body, come around, grab hold of the wrist, and lock. Same on the other hand, here. If they grip same side, we come around the outside, grip, and lock. Thank you for joining us for a little exploration of Nikajo. Okay, you're all right.
Yeah, I'm just
It's going to be a lot, because also I'm ramping it up as well as we go. That's why I'm worried. Just don't, you know. Now there's one for the Outtakes. When we're looking at this can be clearly illustrated Nearly. Moving away from blah, 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 blah. Moving away from centering on the opponent's movements. Sorry. Moving away from centering on manipulation. Moving away from... They look so good when they're done, don't they? Yeah. Unbelievable. Oh dear. Nearly. Okay. We can add pressure points into our... No! Okay. Serious face. Okay. It's too late to be doing this. Okay, this time. We can add pressure points into our... Oh, shit.
I'm just looking at different things in the room.
Yeah, just keep trying. Yeah. Okay. We can add pressure points into our joint locks to make them more effective, but it's important to not rely on the pressure points alone. As I was on a roll. I was thinking, yes, I'm doing it. Oh. Okay, right. Here we go again. I would not be a good actor. For this lock, the major pressure points we're going to look at are along the radial nerve or the ulnar nerve. We also have the median nerve down the middle of the arm, which we'll look at in a few minutes. I didn't need to say that. I didn't need to say we'll look at it in a few minutes because we'll do it. The point flare. That's a simple recap of what we looked at. Blah, blah. There's a simple... Sorry.